Welcome to session 2 in our global Haverim. In our first session, we looked at the context and the connections we made in discovering how Bartimaeus had a new encounter with Jesus. And what we were trying to discover, I think, was how can we have a new encounter with God? And one of the principles I shared by the end of the first session was that if we want something we've never had before, we're going to have to do something we've never done before. And so we're going to look at that now, and we're going to apply it to our own life. And where we used context and connections before, we're going to look at collaborating together and contemplating and using some creative methods to put ourselves into the story. So let's look at the third level of Haverim. The third level is the interpreted level. The Hebrew word is Drache, which means to search. And this is where we collaborate to discover the purpose. So here we have some very specific instructions. Choose the character and verses you want to interpret. Ask why they did what they did. So you're now going to be given an opportunity to pretend to be one of the characters in the passage. We want you to feel and to understand what maybe they felt and understood as well. So the way we do this is we choose the verse and we choose the character. So I'm going to give you two options. There is an anthropological version of this and a theological version. In the anthropological version, we make ourselves one of the human beings. In the theological version of this, we see ourselves as the divine character, in this case, Jesus. So let's look at the first one. So let's look at the anthropological version, in which case our character is Bartimaeus. And the verses are Mark 10, 47 to 48. When he heard it was Jesus of Nazareth, he began to shout, "Jesus, son of David, have mercy on me." Many rebuked him and told him to be quiet, but he shouted all the more, "Son of David, have mercy on me." The question I want you to ask, if you do this version, is why did Bartimaeus shout, "Son of David," and why did he keep on shouting when other people told him to be quiet? Let's give you the theological version as well. In the theological version, our character is Jesus, and our verses are Mark 10, 49 to 51. Jesus stopped and said, "Call him." So they called to the blind man, "Cheer up, on your feet, he's calling you." Throwing his cloak aside, he jumped to his feet and came to Jesus. "What do you want me to do for you?" Jesus asked him. Here, we want you to help us understand, why do you think Jesus even asked the question? Surely it was obvious he was blind, and yet Jesus asks him, "What do you want me to do for you?" So 2 Draches. Now let's remember the Drache principles. The generic instructions are rewrite the verses in the first person, include what the character may have been thinking or feeling, retell the story, fill in the gaps, but whatever you do, don't change the facts. So you can choose which Drache you want to do. You put yourself as though you actually are the character, so you wouldn't say Jesus thought, you would say I thought. You would not say Bartimaeus said, you would say I said. Keep it really short. Try and not make it much bigger than the verses themselves, and add into it what their motive was. Why did Jesus ask the question? Why did Bartimaeus keep shouting and ignore people? And then we want you to share your ideas. Let's move on to the action point. Read out your Drache and optionally use a creative tool to explain what you discovered. Okay, so for this global Haverim, we're going to keep it simple and we're not going to have a creative tool. You're simply going to share your Drache with other people in your Haverim, and using the hashtag global Haverim, it'd be wonderful if you can post it on social media. So what we're going to do is just give you time to do that. If you're a Haverim leader, maybe you can split the group into half so that they can, some can do the theological Drache and some can do the anthropological drash. That would be really helpful for us to understand. And as you guys share your drash on social media using the hashtag Global Haverim, we can all learn from you. And you can, of course, afterwards look at other people's drash and see what they discovered and see if you can learn something from them as well. So let me give you time to do that, and then I'm going to share my drashes with you. So Haverim leaders, please take as long as you would like to take doing this. I would strongly encourage you to do it in complete silence until you share your drashes. Okay, hopefully I can go on social media and I can read your drashes and find out what you think Jesus and Bartimaeus were thinking and feeling. Let me just share my drashes with you. Here's my anthropological drash as Bartimaeus. When I heard that Jesus was walking by, I was very nervous. This could change everything for me, but I knew it might be my only chance to get his attention and win him over. I shouted, "Son of David," because I wanted him to know I was not going to waste his time. The other people tried to stop me, but I was not going to let them waste my once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. Waste not, want not. So I think he realized that he could use this phrase, "Son of David, have mercy on me," because it meant he recognized Jesus as the Messiah. And many people, even some of the disciples possibly at that time, hadn't realized that Jesus was the Messiah. So he got Jesus' attention and he kept shouting because he didn't want to waste the opportunity. Let me read my theological drash to you. There are many needy people on this road, but when I heard Bartimaeus shout, "Son of David," I knew he had faith to be healed. Other people were telling him to be quiet, and I wanted to stretch the faith he had. So with all the peer pressure around him, I asked him to stay in front of them what he wanted me to do, and he did it. I had faith in him to do something special because he had faith in me. Hopefully you're seeing that we can all learn from different people's perspectives. You know, what I wrote may have been the reason that Jesus thought and Bartimaeus thought to do what they did. Maybe not, maybe what you wrote was. But either way, I think it gives us insight into both humanity and divinity. So let's move on to our final session, our final level of Haverim in this second session. This is the inspired level, or Sud in Hebrew, which means secret. This is where we contemplate to discover the practice. So by now, hopefully, you're picking up on this theme of a new encounter. And a new encounter inquires us to do things differently. But that, of course, is not always easy. Bartimaeus had to do something different, but there was a lot of peer pressure around him. I like to tell the story of an American president who once used to when he was at school, pass a wall that he always wanted to climb because he loved climbing. But this wall was so high, he would never climb it. And then nearing the end of his school days, he'd still not plucked up the courage to climb the wall. And so he took off his cap, something that was very precious. He came from a poor family. He knew his father would beat him if he never went home or lost his cap. So he threw his cap over the wall, which forced him to climb the wall to retrieve it. And sometimes we have to do something that kind of forces us to go the extra mile and therefore experience God in a new way. Many years ago, I wanted to force myself to make my daily devotions more consistent. So I would read and pray and study the Bible every day. So what I did to throw my cap over the wall was I decided to blog all my devotions, which forced me to do them because I knew people would know if I had a devotion or not that day. It really, really worked. There was also an extra bonus because a few years of doing that, and I eventually wrote commentaries on 11 books of the Bible. So I now have a commentary on 11 books of the Bible I can go back and look at over years of doing that. So maybe you can decide to do something that's an extra mile, a new way of encountering God, a practical thing. So let me help you as we contemplate. So now we look at the optional catalyst. Use a creative tool to help the group focus their contemplation. So we're going to give you the breakthrough diagram. Maybe that's going to be passed around on a sheet of paper or put up on a screen. This first 5 minutes with some instrumental music in the background, I simply want you to write inside the wider arrow or the fat arrow what you currently do to encounter God. Do you read the Bible? How often do you read the Bible? Do you pray? Do you go to church? What do you practically do? And then we're going to move on to the personal questions. Now, there are normally a few personal questions, but we're going to leave a couple of them out, and we're going to highlight this one. What do you want me to do in response to this passage? So what I'd like you to do, with again some instrumental music in the background, is just simply think, Lord, what would you like me to do to reach out to you in a new way? And I'd like you to write down the answer next to the thin arrow. Then we're going to finally move on to the action point. Share what God said to you and what he inspired you to tell others. So we simply want you to share, if you're willing to do that, any commitment you want to make, anything you put next to the thin arrow, something new you're going to do to encounter God in a new way. Remember, it seems that Jesus responds when we reach out. And when we reach out in a new way, he responds in a new way. So in that little arrow, put what you will do. You could even write maybe at the top what you hope God will do as well, and then share it with each other. Well, hopefully this has been a helpful Haverim. I want you to take the time to complete this level, but I just want to say thank you very much as well for getting involved. Hope you've had a fantastic time. Please make sure you use the hashtag Global Haverim, and at the end we're going to put some details of how you can find out more curriculum and do other Haverims in the future. Bless you, and thanks for taking the time to join together and share your thoughts with all of us. Goodbye.